Welcome back to an episode of Spotlight with Shadow. I am joined by Northland True Patriot Champion, the main man, Josh Bain. We're here to discuss Conquest 6. Josh, how you doing tonight?
Hey, man, I'm better than I've been in a long time. How are you doing, Shadow?
I'm living life. I'm enjoying it, doing this, and I enjoy interviewing you, and I'm glad to have you back for another episode. And I deeply want to divulge into this subject. So without further, I have a couple clips I'd like to roll before we get started talking. So we're going to show those now.
Okay, sounds good.
Right, I understand that, but why not one of your star people, Josh Bain?
Why not Josh Bain? Well, obviously, you're familiar with my history with Josh Bain. Josh is off doing his own thing, and for everything that he's done, everything that he's pulled, a lot of people expect me to want to get in the ring with him and want to, teach him a lesson, tear him a new one, whatever it is. And, there's a part of me that wants to do that. But see, the thing with Josh is despite everything he's done, good or bad, I'm actually proud of him. He did basically everything I taught him, good and bad. I mean, I haven't always been a good guy in the ring, and he's learned his lessons well for me. And he's gone out and he's chosen the lessons that he wanted to choose for me. And look where he is, true Patriot champion. So I'm proud of him for that. The one thing I do have a problem with, obviously, is, he's listening to Tomer Shalom. And nothing ever good comes from listening to someone like Tomer Shalom. But as far as, getting in the ring with Josh, the thing is, I know what would happen if I stepped in the ring with Josh. I know what Josh is all about, and I know what I'd have to do in order to come out of that match on top. And I know that if I went that far, that'd be it. It'd be over. And what I mean by that is, I guess there's part of me that just wishes that maybe Josh would come to his senses and kind of dump Tomer and come back with, his friends at the Energy Y Pro Wrestling Academy and come back with me. And if him and I got into the ring, I don't think that'd be a possibility anymore. So no, I have no interest in wrestling Josh. I don't think I need to at this point. What's he going to prove? He's made his choice, and that's it. I've chosen to wrestle Tommy McLeod, and that's the match that I'm going to have for my last match.
That's fair. That's fair. So that leads me into my question of your feelings when it comes to Josh, considering this is your final match and potentially the end all of it all with no match against him.
Like I said, I'm fine with that. I don't see the point in wrestling Josh. Like, what is it? People want to see me get in the ring and injure him and get a pound of flesh for everything he's done to me. I mean, what's the point of that? Listen, Josh is going to have to deal with the decisions he's making. He's made his bed, he can lie in it, all those cliches, every cliche you can throw out. Josh is his own man. I don't need to wrestle Josh Bain. Let's put it that way. I'm content if Josh and I never step foot in the ring. Again, what's it going to prove? Really? I'm a professional wrestler. I get in there for competition. I've had my share of, grudge matches and revenge, and I don't need that anymore, man. I'm tired of it. And there's no way I want to get into the ring with somebody that, and I don't mind saying this, somebody that I've professed that I love. I love that guy just like I love all my students. And I got to get in the ring now and beat his ass, do things to him that I would do to my worst enemy. No, absolutely not. No, I'd rather just go out and have a nice professional competitive match with Tommy McLeod and keep the promise I made to Tommy. Josh will, if there's comeuppance coming his way, it'll have to be with somebody else.
Dan, I heard your interview with Shadow from Off the Top. And I heard you talking about your last match with Tommy McLeod. And I heard you talking about why that last match isn't against me. You said that you hope that there is a chance that I might one day come back. And that what you would have to do to put me down, if we did fight, there'd be no coming back from that. Well, guess what, Dan? You are having this retirement match because of me. Because I sent you for a surgery that you didn't fully recover from. Because I drove a steel chair into your back and handed a victory to Tomer Shalom. Because at Showcase 3, I kicked you between the legs and I shaved your head and humiliated you in front of every single one of your students. Come and get your revenge, Dan. Don't you want your revenge? Fight me.
So as you see there, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a program 9 months almost in the making. And in that time, he has not touched you. He has avoided you. You've gone on to beat on his star pupil, if you will, in Tommy McLeod and traded victories there with Tommy. So can you describe the last 9 months build to this?
Well, even back further than that, it all started for me when I made my debut at Reloaded. I got a victory over Miles Morgan, and then that night Jimmy Spite also debuted, and he got a victory over Tomer Shalom. And then we had this idea, we were intent on that we were going to go on to the next show, and we wanted to work as a tag team and really represent Energy Y, Dan's school, and make our mark on Northland as and showing what the potential of what that school could mean to this region and to this territory. And then when that show came, I got entered into a rumble. Sorry. And Jimmy got a solo spot on the main show. And to me, that was Dan choosing. He could have had both of us on that show. But in that moment, Dan chose Jimmy. And he put his eggs in that basket. So that night when Dan and Tomer Shalom were having their I Quit match, I made my presence felt, and I helped Tomer get the win over Dan. Then things moved on. We were set to have me and Tomer versus Dan and Jimmy in a tag team match at Rumble in the North. When Dan opened the show, I attacked him. I put his leg in a chair. I Pillmanized him, sent him away for surgery. Just so happened Eddie Dennis was in the building, and he got added to that match in Dan's place. There again, me and Dan don't get to touch. Dan had his surgery. Everything happened. And then we get to where Dan announces he comes back for one match, and it's going to be against Tommy McLeod. And I thought, after everything, what an absolute joke that was to me, because Dan, the one thing I can say at the time, I felt like the Dann Jarris that taught me was Dann Jarris that was never afraid to do what it took to secure his position. It was a Dann Jarris that had a vicious side. It was a Dann Jarris that wasn't afraid to hurt people to get what he needed. I took that lesson very seriously. So I did not let that match have a conclusion, and I stopped that match, and I robbed him of that cathartic moment with his student. So then what's he do? I think I'm going to get Dan. Instead, he gives me Tommy. And somehow, Tommy's a hell of a talent. Tommy got the better of me that night, and Tommy took the True Patriot Championship. So my next goal was I had to get my title back. And the night that I beat Tommy for the True Patriot Championship, I took a steel chair and I put it in the center of the ring, and I put Tommy up on my shoulder. And I said to Dan that if he didn't agree to fight me, I was going to drop Tommy head first onto that steel chair under my foot. And when Dan came and accepted the match, I did what only the darker impulses of myself would lead me towards, and I still hit him on. I'd still dropped him onto that chair.
Yeah,
And
Tom just messed up from that. I remember those.
yeah, they
He
took
was
him
out
away
for a
in the
little while
ambulance that night. And Dan finally agreed to the match. And really that's how we got to Conquest. Is it was a long road of me pushing him to get in the ring. Why did I want the match with him so bad? Was it because I was jilted that Jimmy got put forward, that was taken away from me? Was I was sick of always kind of being put second? Yeah, there was that. In a big way, there was that. But there was also something that there was a risk that night that Dan put me on the pre-show and put me in that Rumble. And the risk was that Josh Bain wasn't going to be at the front. And Josh Bain is going to make sure that he gets to the front any way he can, because that's how Dan Jarris taught him to be.
So going back to the night where you debut on the Rumble, if you will,
Yeah.
You felt like you suddenly had a chip on your shoulder and Dan kind of just threw you to the side like a toy.
Yeah. And I entered first in that Rumble, and I damn well made sure that I was the last guy leaving it. Tooth and nail. I'm always going to take every opportunity to get above the pack. And I felt that I had two opportunities that night. One was to win that Rumble, which I did, and the other was to make an example, to leave an example, to leave a message for Northland at the expense of Dan Jarris, and maybe teach him a lesson there in disregarding me.
And in that time where you were thrown to the back of the line, we'll say, for this conversation, what did Jimmy go on to do that you think you could have done better?
Look, it's not even about what can be done better. Like Jimmy grabbed the reins. Jimmy went forward. Jimmy became the first true Patriot champion back from the shutdown, back from the lockdown. Jimmy had a great run. I'm the guy that took that belt from him. Jimmy, in a lot of ways, became the top one of the top guys in the company. That he had such a groundswell of support behind him, and he had the support of Northland. He had the support of Dan behind him. I think one of the missing parts of this story is that Jimmy started slowly targeting my guys. I joined the Vicious Circle. We formed a group. We had we were running roughshod over the roster. I'm not going to lie. In hindsight, I know what I was to the Vicious Circle. I was the gun. They kept pointing me at their problems, but they were never at my side. But I didn't need them. But I knew that they were a thorn in everyone's side. I knew that they were a problem, and I liked being a part of the problem. And Jimmy started targeting the Circle. And one night, a couple months back, 4 months back, Jimmy and the Circle had a big old fight, and Jimmy had, I think, enough, and he took his ball and he went home, and he left Northland, and there it was again. There, Jimmy was gone. Dan's star pupil. He walked out because he just couldn't. He couldn't deal with what was going on, and there was another opportunity.
Right. And I'm assuming, so I might be wrong on the history here, but you're a 2 or 3 time True Patriot champion.
I'm the first ever 2-time True Patriot champion.
I wasn't sure if it was 2 or 3. I knew it was in that range, right?
Yeah, first ever 2-time True Patriot champion.
So you have Jimmy taking his ball and going home, kind of like Stone Cold in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Leaving the company guy, right? Now that leads charge for an open door for anybody to take his spot. And you said, and you're like, screw that. This is my spot. I earned it. I've been here. It should have been me to begin with.
Yeah.
So now we're fast forwarding over the last few months. You've had, you've beaten up pretty much anybody that stood in your way.
Yeah.
If you've gone to beat legends, I've heard, and stuff like
Yeah.
that in your wake.
Yeah.
So stepping away from the main issue you have right now in Northland, getting to Conquest 6, you had to go through a variety of wrestlers,
Yeah.
different styles, bigger guys, smaller guys. How do you keep your mindset still focused on Dan being the main target?
See, for me, I said it to Dan. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Like in between the time where I decided that it was conquest or nothing, I was gonna get Dann Jarris in that ring. And over the last year, I've been very fortunate. I've worked hard. I've earned spots, and I've gotten to get in the ring with guys like, everyone knows. I got to tangle it up, and I took out Trent Seven. I got in there and I tangled up with Too Cold Scorpio. Savio Vega. I've been Chris Masters.
Yeah, Adonis. Yeah. Like, these aren't just names you're throwing out; these are bodies you've laid waste to on the path here.
Yeah. So
Like,
I feel like I've been tested, but it didn't matter about any of those guys. Those guys were an opportunity to show who I was, who I am, what I'm capable of. Win, lose, or draw, all of those matches, doesn't matter. The biggest match of my career was Dann Jarris.
So now we're on the week building up, and I haven't been able to catch any promos if you guys had done them. But I can only imagine where this was going. It's very personal at this point, going into Conquest 6. You've taken what you consider the reins of the company into your own hands. You forced Dan's hand into this match. So I want to get into it, but I have a 30-second clip I'd like to show. It's courtesy of Phantom Funeral on Instagram. Thank you for the clip, sir. I'd like to run that now, and then we'll get talking into Conquest.
Sure, yeah.
It's bleeding.
So there you have it. You have the end still, and that's got to be the most
Yeah.
beautiful sound you can hear after every match.
Yeah.
That match looked violent from the clips. I've seen other clips, but this is what I wanted to roll here. So I got to ask, this is your biggest show of the year, the biggest match of your career, as you've said. A sold out house, I believe.
Oh yeah, we oversold.
Like, before we get into like the match itself, how does it feel knowing that I believe you're the co-main event, right? Because there was 2 main events that night.
That's right. Yeah.
You're the co-main event. How does it feel to be in that spot in front of that many people out there and just killing it?
It's another day at the office.
And you had someone play you out. Like, that is the dopest shit ever.
Yeah. I had Emmy Award winning audio designer Davy Aquino played me out to the ring, played my theme out to the ring. That was pretty cool. But it was one of those things again. It was like, I'm going to take every opportunity to make sure people remember Josh Bain at the end of the night.
Right.
And and so that was just one more way to make an impact.
I mean, typically saying, and I mean, we've seen it at the highest levels, people that typically get played in never fare well. They always seem to be on the other end of that spectrum there. So now we're going to get into this, and maybe you could take me through a lot of this match and what throughout the night, and where your head was at and where your body was at. Because again, it's got to be at that point now, you've got what you want, your emotions are high, but at the same time, it's got to be draining.
Yeah. Like the month before we went into the show, the last Northland show at Malice, Dan got into the ring at the beginning of the show, and he made a final plea with me to bury the hatchet. And he reminded me of a few things. He said, we used to be, you weren't just my student, but we were friends. I had a very special relationship with his son, Roman. He used to come over, we'd play games. Roman's into comic books and stuff too. So we'd do that kind of stuff. And, he said, if not for me, for Roman, like, let's put this away, shake my hand, and just kind of come home. And I refused that. And I said to Dan the week of the show, I said, you appeal to my better judgment. You appeal to my kindness, and this is my better judgment talking now. Leave Roman at home. And I think the biggest thing in the match for me, the thing started. I wanted to fight. Dan knew that the way to do this thing would be to out wrestle me. He kept trying to ground me, and eventually, I was able to fight through that, and it got pretty smash mouth. I busted that chair over him. I don't know if you saw that. That chair broke apart.
That was a mean shot. Yeah.
Yeah. And at that point, as the match went on, I hit down with my finish 5 times. He would not stay down. He had nothing left. His legs were limp. I was hoisting him up, but he would not stay down. And I'm watching this guy, and I'm thinking, like, this is the guy he's a no quit. He knows he can't fight me anymore, but he keeps refusing to give the match up. And then Roman came out, and he was at ringside, and he was crying, and he was asking me to stop hurting his dad. And I couldn't do it anymore. And I put Dan down, and then Dan slowly started to work to his feet, and he couldn't get up. So he started climbing up me. And then when he got to his feet, he looked at me and he said, "It's okay. Finish me." And at that point, seeing Roman out there crying, I couldn't do it. And I said no. And Dan hauled off, and he slapped me across the face, and I picked him up, and I hit him with the silence right onto that steel chair and got the 3. And this is where everything kind of got crazy. I kind of was sitting there in disbelief. I didn't know what I was just a part of. And then Tomer Shalom came out, and he picked up the steel chair, and he gave me the steel chair, and he said, "Okay, finish the job. Make sure Dan never wrestles again." And I told him I didn't think I could. And then Tomer turned around, and Roman was on top of his dad trying to shield him. Tomer grabbed that little kid by the back of the head and threw him across the ring. And that was it. As soon as Tomer turned around, I blasted him with that steel chair, and I went nuts on him. And that was enough was enough. That was the line too far. And then the rest of our group came out. Tomer, Matt Black came out to aid Tomer, and was putting the boots to me and Dan, who'd just been through hell. And that's when Jimmy Spike came out and even the playing field and chased them off. And the cathartic moment of Roman helping his dad up to his feet and reaching for his friends, reaching for the 2 guys that have looked out for him in that locker room in that school, and putting his hand out, and all 3 of us answering that, and making sure that everybody knew we were back on the same page. I don't know if I'll ever forget that.
Yeah, I've seen before I get into the aftermath of the match here, when you had said that Dan was crawling up you and said, "It's okay, finish me," the immediate thought in my head, and I'm going to go back to a few WrestleManias here, but it's like that Shawn Michaels, Ric Flair moment for you.
Yeah.
It's like the teacher and the teacher and the student now are be like, "Okay, I'm sorry, I love you, but this has to be the way it is."
Yeah.
That's just my personal thought, just from the way you described it.
Yeah,
That's where my head went.
Yeah. And in this one, it was like, this is someone who's got no quit. And Dan saying, like, for whatever confusion Dan had about what I wanted from our encounter, in that moment, when I saw Roman and didn't want to finish Dan saw his son and knew it had to end here, and basically just said, look, pull the trigger, finish it, take what you want, take your pound of flesh. Yeah.
So I have to ask, now that you've kind of laid out the roadway for this. Now, you had originally started it off with spite, maybe,
Yeah.
right? But as you go on, is it more of that you felt like you had everything to prove to Dan that you were the guy from the beginning and he just potentially looked past you?
That's it. Like Dan saw, a world of potential in Spite, and Spite is the man. I don't know that. I think if you're gonna, for me, Spite's the wrestler I wish I could be. Jimmy Spite's, he's the best of us. But where I see my holes, I come up with other ways to compensate for them. And just because I shook Dan's hand and I aligned back with him and Jimmy, and doesn't mean that Josh Bain is going to be any less vicious than he has been, because that's what I need to do, and that's who I am.
You're the guy that
Yeah.
sets the tone, like
That's it.
guy that rings the bells of everybody. Now, you've come back to, I'll say the bright side of things. I won't call it the
Yeah.
dark side or
Sure.
stuff like that, because it's not Star Wars. We've come to the lighter side of things. So we're gonna see you going forward as not much of an I gotta word this carefully, because I don't want to get driven through a chair or nothing. So we're not gonna see as malicious intent anymore from you, but we're still gonna see a very hard hitting Josh Bain.
Hard hitting for sure. But I'm not gonna lie. Whoever I'm standing across the ring from, they've got malicious intent coming their way. I'm not here to make friends. I'm just fortunate enough that the people who once were my friends have welcomed me back. But if you're in my way, I'm still the main man.
Hey, gotta ask the questions, right? You never know. So now you did that great match with Dan, and now you went on an 8-day, 8-match journey that's taking you I'll say no across North America, but it's mainly just the East Coast here.
Yeah.
So how was that for you, and like, what do you have coming up, man?
It was fantastic. It was kind of cleansing. We had there was so much pressure going into Conquest. 2 years of struggle, and all coming to a head here. And I got maybe more than I wanted out of it. Because the one thing I didn't anticipate getting back was the family that I'd created. And I got them back. And then I got to go on this journey, this 8-match journey, and I shut them all down along the way. Dropped just about everybody I came in contact with. So there was something nice about going out there and just doing the job, just going in there to get the W, not going in there because there was something emotional at stake for me. Just going out there to make sure I was furthering my career and strengthening my position. So I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that 8-day tour because I just got to wrestle, and there's been so much tension, and the stakes have been so high here at Northland that it was nice. It was nice to just go on the road and just to get in there and mess some fools up.
And during this tour, you made your American debut, correct?
I did, yeah.
And how well did that go over down there for you? Did you beat up any Yankees, I guess would be the term to use?
Yeah. I tangled up with Alvin Turner. No, sorry, I can't. I just said the wrong name. Give me 2 seconds. I feel like such a jerk right now. If he watches it, I'm gonna feel like such a prick.
Part of the character. Leave it alone.
That's right. Anyway, sorry. We went out there. We worked. Went to Michigan. I had a really great time in Michigan, and the crowd was hot. The promoter was great, and I got to work Melvin Hayes. Sorry, Alvin Turner just came into Northland a couple months ago, so Alvin. But Melvin Hayes, man, that guy's over. The crowd loves him out there, and he is just, you know, I might be a prick and I might hit you hard, but he hit me. He gave it back just as much as I gave it out, and I got to respect that. So I enjoyed trading soup bones with that guy, and yeah, no, I had a good time.
So what? I know you say Michigan. You don't have to divulge this information at all. But which promotion and what city were you down in?
I went to Iron Mountain.
Okay.
For UPW.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a couple buddies that are in Michigan in the Owasso area and stuff like that. So they're training to become wrestlers now or doing little things here and there. So I was just trying to see if that's kind of where around you were. So
Yeah. UPW is where we were at, and those guys it was a great place to be. Really great to be around.
So what does the summer of Bain look like?
Okay, well, we've got Northland's got 3 shows in July, and now I know that now that I'm back in Dan's good graces, I don't need to keep causing people to have an absolute desire to get revenge on me to get on the show. So I think that I'm just going to factor in a more pleasant way now. So we got 3 shows in July, and then we've got the Great Canadian Clash in August. I've got some other dates. I'm probably gonna be working with CWE, Canadian Wrestling Elite, again, and then I'm just gonna be training. There's lost time to make up for. I'm hoping that me, Dan, and Jimmy can find some opportunities to tag. It's what we always was. That was the dream originally, right? So
Maybe we'll see a trios championship appear somehow.
hey, who knows, right? You never know. But we're looking forward to actually being able to get in there and work together, which was the original goal.
Right. I know you guys. The first show coming up is the showcase, but I don't think that's any of the bigger talent, right? That's just the smaller guys showcasing what they got.
Well, so like that's
I ask it like that, and I don't mean to disrespectfully.
No. The showcase. I don't want to say the bigger talent because me and Tom McLeod main evented. We sold. I think that we sold a lot of those tickets to Conquest on the backs and popularity of guys like myself and Dan and Tommy and Rusty. Zandra Lee. So I don't want to say that I just don't want to say that concede to saying the bigger talent. But what
would it be easier to say like more or less, not the again, it's no disrespect anyway.
The graduates highlighting the graduates of Energy Y.
There we go. That's probably an easier way to say it.
Showcase, right? But when you got the Diggos going out there and beating the Bollywood boys, no one's got bigger talent than the Diggies.
Listen, so, I gotta ask because I follow the Bollywood boys religiously on Twitter. I'm always trying to engage with them. We've kind of engaged a little bit, not to the point where I've gotten buddies with them. So what was it like with them in the locker room this past couple weeks?
Look, man, I've been working it's no secret. People know that my job outside of wrestling, the only other thing I do is I'm a film actor, right? Right. So I've been spending my whole adult life around people that most people get starstruck in front of. I think part of the reason I do so well is I don't sweat names. I'm a respectful guy, but I don't get starstruck. I think that helps me. So I just try to treat guys that have been places the way I'd want to be treated, not the way that
not kissing ass, basically.
Not the way that maybe I or someone thinks someone should be treated, but I just show people in the back the respect that I would want them to show me. And that's just how I do my thing.
I know they had posted there on Twitter a picture backstage at the Northland show. It was them, Adonis, and a couple others.
Yeah, Mo
And I,
Jabari, Tommy Billington.
I had commented on that post. I'm like, man, it's great to see you guys in Northland, right? Like, I every chance I get, I gotta plug that name, you know.
Yeah. It's appreciated, you know.
So with that being said, you have arguably a busy summer coming up.
Yeah.
Hopefully, where you keep busy either with shoot work or wrestling.
Yeah.
What's your next biggest project outside of wrestling going to be?
Man, can I get in trouble for doing this? I'm working on a show with. I got a part on a show. I can't say it, but here's what I'll do. No one can get me in trouble because you're smart. I'll be working on a show with a legend of a film.
Okay.
Who is connected to pro wrestling. He might even be in the WWE Hall of Fame. And he might have become famous because of his physique. And then he turned into one of the biggest actors in the world. Hall of Fame, like I said, some of the biggest movies in history. And maybe he has a very thick accent.
Okay. I'll leave it there so that way you don't keep going on and giving hints.
Yeah. I think you know who I'm talking about, though, huh?
I think I have an idea.
Yeah. He famous for ice puns for a while there.
I gotta ask though, because I know where you are, and it's not too far. But when can we expect to see you on Shoresy, man? I
Well,
want to
maybe
see you
who
out there
knows? I
just
was on
suplexing
Letterkenny,
guys.
right? I did Letterkenny. And at first they were doing a thing where they weren't seeing people who'd been on Letterkenny for Shoresy. So I don't know if that's gonna keep going. But I haven't auditioned for Shoresy at all because I was on Letterkenny.
Okay. I mean, it'd be good to see you on there because I'd be like that Leonardo DiCaprio meme.
Yeah.
With that being said, thank you for your time, and I appreciate
man,
always sitting down and talking with you.
Yeah.
Promote everything you can, your new line of merch, everything.
Yeah. Daddy's home. Daddy's home. I will say that I ordered a full line of new merch. We sold it out, and we sold it out almost completely in one night. So I've just restocked the Daddy's Home T-shirt. You've got one in the mail coming your way, my friend.
Yeah, I'll definitely be posting that everywhere once I have it.
Yeah, yeah.
I
So
can't
the
wait.
restock is happening. But I've always avoided going out there and selling because I didn't want to engage with the fans for the last little while. So I've never been at the table selling my stuff. But I'll be out there now, signing those autographs and making sure people know that I appreciate them and their support. And I don't know, man. For anyone that needs a reminder, here's the thing: the main man's in the house. Daddy is home.
That being said, I am Shadow. This has been Spotlight with Shadow. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next one.